which kind of brings me to my second point about Joan, who is a talented poet. You know, some of the best poets in the United States, you see Stephen Dunn, for example, if you follow poetry, is a big admirer of Joan's work, as I always have been. She's a writer who has been published in Cosmopolitan. She has several books out. She's a fabulous performer. She's one of the best performers of poetry in the United States. You can see her on the video Soul Speak, that her stage name is Adora, A-D-O-R-A. There's about 50 poetry videos that she's made that are up there, and if you just go to YouTube and you type in Soul Speak Spring, all one word, and then the word Adora, you'll get all of her videos. You'll see what a fabulous performer she is and what a great poet she is. Joan had a very unfortunate experience when she came here, because she was naive enough to think that the people in town were real patrons of the arts, and she attended a writers group of women. She had been here about a year or two, and thought she'd go out and she'd meet some of the gringo community. And she had just published a book on the sexual chi. You know, chi being the spiritual energy, your body energy, that it has a long tradition in China and in the world of good thinking. You know, people who happen to know how, in fact, the body is constructed and how the spirit is interwoven in it. And that chi can be used as a way of helping to maintain your health and all sorts of things. This is a thousands of year old tradition. Joan published a book on your sexual chi, which is that chi that's concerned with your sexual energy and your sexual receptivity. Some of the very good writers in town, like Paul Molyneux, were really struck by how avant-garde it was and how new it was compared to the other writing he had seen. And yet when Joan brought her book over to the writers group, which is a usual group of old women who were scribbling away somewhere, she was asked not to come back. I guess the book was just too much for them. They couldn't handle it, you know. But if you think that you have a broad-minded, artistically minded group, even amongst the artists here, the gringo artists, it doesn't happen. You know, that was really criminal what happened to Joan forming, and to have that kind of insult, we'd rather you don't come back, from a bunch of hacks is just unbelievable. So that is one more reason why, despite the long trip, we had first come to Alamos when we lived in California, and it was a relatively short trip. We're now back in Florida, and it's a 9-day trip to get here. So between the fact that this is hardly an arts town, and it's hardly a town in which people are open-minded and receptive, but rather they're kind of inclusive and you're gossipy in a mean way, as only small-minded people can be. I mean, they're everywhere in the U.S., but we have our share of them here. And whose gringo arts community is, with some exceptions, not much to talk about, you know. So if you're a artist who is thinking of coming down here and have read in the magazine, this is a wonderful arts town, then watch out. The people here don't understand the arts. They're kind of the superficial patrons of the arts. They like to pat the little Mexican kids on the head after they sing, but they don't know anything about the arts, and they don't appreciate artists. And, you know, outside of a real few exceptions, they're a sad lot. So I think you want to keep that in mind, especially also if you're a broad-minded patron of the arts. You're not going to find that here. This is a bunch of small-town people who think they have wealth and position, but the fact of the matter is, if you had any wealth and you had any position, you wouldn't be in Alamos. You'd be in Spain, or you'd be in the Canary Islands, or you'd be in Rio de Janeiro. You wouldn't be here, you know. So what you have is a bunch of you should call a bunch of arrivistes who have come here to play the big role, but they hardly really fit the shoes of the dons who are here before, at least had some culture and some upbringing and some real wealth and some real nobility. So if you have a lot of work to do and you don't mind going into the barrios, there are some good gringo artists there. There's some good Mexican artists, and you'll have a nice small community among them. But this is not an arts town like San Miguel, where you'll find in other places in Mexico. This is a cow town with some new dons in it. So with that said, I want to just set those two things straight, because I think you have to be aware of the kind of tone of a large part of this town is very small, and it's not the kind of thing that invites expression through the arts. It's not the attitude you'd meet in Los Angeles or Chicago, or you'd meet in Boston, or you'd meet in New York. It's like the kind of small town you get in Peoria, or some small kind of podunk town where people are afraid of anything that's new or that is not down these small and narrow chain of beliefs, you know. So, town is safe. The town is very dusty. The Mexican people are wonderful here. If you don't speak any Spanish, they'll just go along with you. Just try, and they'll eventually, you know, come forth, and you'll have a good conversation with them. And for sure, that in fact you'll enjoy, you know, their art. So, with that said, you know, Joan and myself are going to be heading over to Merida, where we want to get to a more cosmopolitan area with a larger bunch of gringos with a larger range of interests, and also into a university town where there's more arts, and it's really the center of the old Mexican culture, you know, in terms of Mayan culture, so we want to get over there too. And with that said, you take a look at my other two comments on Alamos. If that's the kind of town that you want, then you should come down and you should make it your home here, or in fact at least your place to stay. So you can see all those videos by going to YouTube, and you key in Soul Speak Spring into the channel, search, you know, Soul Speak Spring, all one word, and it'll come up with my page. And if you go to the playlist, you'll see all kinds of things on Alamos. You can look them up, and you can see some of the other things that we're doing that are on the cutting edge of art and video and poetry, both myself and Joan and the wonderful artists here in Alamos, both gringo and Mexican especially, that we have collaborated with. And we hope to continue that collaboration throughout our days in Mexico as we travel over towards the Gulf Coast and the center of the original Mayan culture.